What is up, Deliverance fans? This is Andrew Lowen, your fearless leader here, and I'm actually joined today by our fearless artist, Dan Maynard. He's the concept artist for Deliverance and is just an all-around fantastic human. We actually recently brought him on because of the success of Council of the Fallen. We were able to bring Dan on a full-time basis to do more than just be the concept artist because it just in case you don't know, as you'll probably learn in this discussion, he has a much greater skill set, and we're going full in on this nerd nerd thing, and I'm super excited. So
I love
um
nerd stuff.
yes. So yeah, um the reason that I wanted to get on and record was because we've been doing a lot of really fun things in the background, just working on the various characters and developing Deliverance, the Council of Fallen expansion characters. And we've so Dan is a project manager for Deliverance, and he is involved in game development as much as art right now. And so he's we're discussing how to make characters feel dynamic and interesting and every talent feel fun and whatnot. And our process has improved so much, since we when I started with the original Deliverance when it was just me. And so I thought it'd be really fun to just kind of open that up a little bit and talk about that. So this conversation is just meant to be something you'll get to know us a little bit better, but you'll get to know the process that we use for the characters. And if you're interested in that, should be a good time. So Dan, in the background, you've got Damascus. You're actually that's your tablet that you actually work on
It sure is.
to paint the stuff, right?
It
Wow,
is. This is where the magic happens.
that's awesome. And then you have a cat,
I do. I don't know where it
right?
is right now. Probably hiding because there's someone on my screen. I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, so why don't you share a little bit about some of your experience, because a lot of people will know you as the concept artist that did all the angels and all the demons and stuff like that,
Yep.
but you have experience that goes beyond that, that is in game design, development, and breaking games and just being good at games. So maybe give a little bit of your background.
Okay. As far as being good at games, I wouldn't say I'm, you know, pro good at all in any way, shape, or form. But for someone who dabbles, I do pretty well. I got masters in TFT, and if you know what that game is, it's a pretty hard game. But beyond that, I'm a dad gamer now, so I don't really
Pretty
reach
good at
such
League of Legends
accolades
too, right?
for a dad and working person. Yeah, I do okay.
But what is pretty good, like, for people that
So
know what League of
I'm
Legends is?
high. I've gotten to high emerald, which if you play League, that's you're doing okay in high emerald, but you're not anywhere close to like the challenger, master, or diamond players. Like it's a huge jump when you go up one more division from where I'm at. But it means I know the fundamentals pretty well and everything.
Yeah. You just don't have the APM of
I don't,
14 year
and
olds.
it's getting worse. Every year it just gets worse.
I think that people, as you like, I'm also dad, and I feel like it just get lazier. Like I care just a little bit less.
Yeah,
It's like I'll
it's hard not
play
to.
fewer times. Um,
There's less at
yeah,
stake. You've got
yeah,
more priorities other places and stuff. So, but
yeah.
I still like to get on and at least try my best and then get whooped every now and then. Then you just turn off the game. If you get whooped, you just turn off the game so you don't tilt.
Yep, yep.
So you
So
at least cover the lack of APM with some wisdom at least.
yeah, I used to play and lose one game and then lose six more
Yep,
in a row,
exactly.
and it's like, oh my
That's why I've got
goodness.
like my first loss, I'm done for the day.
Yep.
Kind of rule.
Wow, that's a tough rule to adhere to. It's easy sometimes, and then other times you're just like, oh, just one more.
It was
And
harder when I had more time to try more games, but now it's like, oh yeah, only time for a game anyway, so
yeah,
makes it a little easier for that way.
yeah. So
Um,
what was some of your like past experience in gaming, as far as like, did you play like all the Blizzard games? Big are you a big like RPG player, or like what's like some of the history?
so I would say for like my generation, like my age, the game that was competitive for me was like Smash Melee, Halo 2, were like, those were the big games to be good at back in my young days. There was also like the StarCraft and Warcraft, but I was not an RTS person. I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the APM for it. Um, but like for tabletop stuff specifically, you have far more experience than I do with that, as far as you can see behind you, as far as how many games you've played.
Yeah, I have a
Um,
problem.
yeah, I don't know if about a problem, but it's
It's
definitely a passion.
it feeds my habit. I have even more
Oh
here.
my
This
gosh.
is like, yep, got a few
We
Kickstarters in.
have
So hold on.
a cedar chest full of games, and that's about it.
Yep.
But
Wow.
we still enjoy it. I play a lot of games through my friends and stuff.
But you're
Um,
also a huge RPG player.
yeah, so we do play D&D, and my brother and I actually developed our own RPG.
Mhm.
And it's just been one of those things where it's just been constant refinement. And our friends have been telling us to release it for like 15 years. And we're just like, nah, not good enough. And we just try again. And then
Yeah.
we redo the whole thing. So if we were to count all the additions of the RPG, we've designed like, I don't know, 20 or so. But we just keep refining it, learning from our mistakes, getting better. And that's been the main thing, is just learning from the mistakes so you don't do them again. You learn why it didn't work and break your own stuff. Have your friends play it, they break it, and then you again learn and fix it.
Yeah. It's interesting because there are a lot of, different philosophies in board game design where the rule book is are kind of the guardrails of the game, where most of the time it's like, why can't I do this game breaking thing? It's like, because there's a
Yeah,
rule that says you can't, or whatever, right? um and I think the better games conceal that limit a little bit better, where I don't know, like for example, a game like Scythe is a game that I played a bunch of times. um you can't take the same action twice in a row. You take a movement action and then you need to take some other action that's like trade or whatever before you move again.
yeah,
So you can't just, jet like super speed right down to the center space to get a bonus quickly or whatever. And it does provide some balance and kind of slows down the abuse of some element of the game. I think that clever games have mechanics that hide limitations, but
yeah.
Deliverance kind of challenges you to break the game, which
Yes,
I always wanted to make a game like that, where it's like, if you find a broken combo, good job, and you should feel
right.
like you're ultra powerful and you're not limited so much. You're only limited by your own decisions and whatnot. But there are actually, as clever as we can make them, guardrails hidden within the game that prevent you from being ridiculously overpowered,
Right.
such the game becomes trivialized, right? Um,
Which a
but
lot of that is
even
just amount of targets you can hit with how broken your character is and things of that nature. Where like, look, I did 1,000 damage to something that had 10 health and it's dead. It's
yeah,
very dead.
yeah,
So
yeah. So as far as the Deliverance in particular, you got into Deliverance. Obviously you and I started working together. This was back in 2019. I want to say January 2019.
yeah, so
So
it should
it's
be
now
6 years.
been, yeah, 6 years. Wow, it's been a long time. Real pleasure, by the way.
Yeah.
um and you have, I want to say you were the concept artist, but then you had to understand a lot. I remember the first time I gave you details about an angel, I sat down for like 4 hours and compiled concept images. And I remember, like, for Shula, as an example, we did, I think, Christine and Michael first. But when we did Shula, it was like, I want an angel that is dancing and twirling and has these doves that are flying around her and whatnot. And my wife and I sat down for several hours just putting stuff together in a description that we gave you. And then Damascus, which is right there on your screen, it's like, okay, we want a guy that's like a big wrestler, darkness grappler guy. Go.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah. The
okay.
process has definitely changed and evolved.
Yeah.
But learning your initial vision from the get-go was the important part. So I knew that when I was making something, it fit your vision, not my vision, not someone else's vision, not what was cool at the time, but figuring out what you wanted Deliverance to be, so that we made sure that everything was by the same captain was the key. And after I kind of learned what you wanted and what kind of fit the IP you were going for, now at this point I'm pretty comfortable with it, so I can kind of just take what's few notes you give me and just kind of go for it. Okay, darkness grappler. So when someone's wrestling with darkness, Sackcloth is something that they would often wear during that time, so that's why Damascus is wearing a sackcloth, because when you struggle with that type of thing, that was a very common practice. So just things like that. I'll try to figure out things that fit what you're looking for, but then make sure they all stay within the kind of initial vision that you set.
Yeah. And it's really cool because I mean you have a lot of great ideas and everything. Like the sackcloth, I would have never thought of that. And it's just something that just different perspectives and add so much more. But I find the working with you early on, I had this fear that I was going to call your baby ugly when I gave you critical feedback. Like, I don't like that. And I found it was the exact opposite. You're like, no, no, you kept telling me, no, I want this feedback. I want to make it how you want it to make it, how you want it to be. I'm not concerned about, making sure that my thing is, that I get this one little thing that I wanted in there. Um, and that made, it made things really easy. What it made it really easy for me to work with you because I'm rather opinionated. And over time, I've learned to kind of soften a little bit. And not that I'm not open to hearing other people's feedback, but I tend to be sometimes confrontational, wanting you to argue for your idea. And I've learned to soften up a little bit over time. As I work with my wife, she's very non confrontational. I work with Adam or Chaz, and trying to make sure that people feel like they can be heard. Um, I tend to soften up a lot, but for you, I could be as rough as I wanted to be, and you're just like, oh, okay, cool. Here's, you know,
Yeah.
like 2 hours later, here's an updated thing, and it was like there was no ego in there at all.
Yeah, it's
Um,
much more efficient to just tell me what needs to be fixed. And then sometimes we will have a back and forth if, I just don't understand what the problem is. I understand that there is a problem, but just trying to figure out like, okay, so this is the specific issue at hand that caused you to not like this thing. When we can kind of work that out, then I'm a happy camper because then I
yeah,
can know what I did that didn't fit and just avoid it in the future, which saves a lot of time versus just fixing the thing that one instance and then just repeating the mistake.
right.
So as long as
That
we
would
can figure out what went wrong, then I'm just super happy about it.
Yeah. And in that case, you're a little bit like me sometimes where you're I'll say like you're okay with a more confrontational
Absolutely, yeah.
discussion because it needs to be done right. And we have to figure out together what's right so that we can
Yeah,
do what's right. So it's kind of almost like you feed back to me my own um style, which is like, uh justify why it should be this way. So and for me, I'm like, I have an idea of what I want, justify why it should be different than what I want. But for you, it's like justify why that should be the standard that we use for everything else, and
yeah,
which I think is an excellent way to be. And it's that quality that I think fits kind of like peanut butter and jelly with
for
the
sure.
team. So you came on as a project manager and you got involved in all sorts of things. You want to just share kind of some of the things you're up to?
Um, so like more as a project manager or just everything?
Just everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're working on fun other stuff, which we won't talk about right now. And then we're
Creating the angel
working
craft,
on
right?
right. And then working on art still. So right now, the goal with the art before we get too deep into anything else is just get everything ready so we can get the Kickstarter project Council of the Fallen shipped ASAP. So it's kind of just all hands on deck for the most part with that. But part of that is also the scenario pack, which was part of the Kickstarter. So I've been working with Chaz and Adam a lot, and they're doing a lot of really awesome scenarios. So helping just they'll come up with a really awesome idea, like guys, this is sweet, and then I'll just break it and hand the pieces, like build it again, and then they do it. And so they've been awesome. And that's kind of what my main role has like been is just they come up with a really cool vision, a really clear idea of what they want, and then just helping refine some of the mechanics to make it play how they initially wanted it, but not in a way that a player can just kind of pick it up and just break the system and play it
Mhm.
in a way that is not intended.
Yeah.
Um, so that's pretty much it. A lot of art stuff, trying to just prep assets ready for shipping, so that they can be handed off to next part of the pipeline, and then getting the scenarios done with the team. Because after they get all their initial concepts done, then they hand it back to me and say, okay, now it needs a picture. So then I'll make the pictures for the scenarios and all that such as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've been hard at work, and I'm really excited. So far, it looks like we're on schedule with everything and ahead of schedule in some ways. Like for example, like the refining of the art. A lot of that we were doing all the way up until we finally hit print. I
Yeah.
remember having giving all the PDFs over to Long Pack Games, and they would give me a proof in return of all the PDFs and in their format that they knew how to print. And with all the files lined up and everything. And I'm like, oh, I have to change this image out because we actually have a new image of Michael or whatever.
Yeah.
He has blue eyes now or something like that.
Right.
And it seems like we're just so far ahead of where we're at. Like a lot of the
Yes.
refinement we didn't realize we were going to have to do at the time of the first game, like the acrylic standees, they
Mm-hmm.
all had their wings like on full display. But like Sardius, for example, who has his wings spread out, ends at, or ended at the top of the whatever the art area,
Yeah.
and we had to do the tips of his wings at like the
Which is
very
actually
last
what
minute.
I was just doing here, because you
Mhm.
can see the bounding box of where it was painting, and now he has wingtips. So
Wow.
he's being refined right now. The demon minions, they're all ready for print. They're done. Angels are nearly done. I think I've got Damascus left, and then he might actually be the last one.
Yeah.
And I'm finishing him up right now. And then the princes and bosses and stuff of that nature, and then
Yeah.
the scenarios.
Yep.
So and these are just like final pass things. They're not like, oh, they have to be started from start to finish. It's like going over doing that last layer of painting,
Yep.
and that last 5% makes a big difference. So
Yeah. It really does. It's
yeah.
like I thought that Pirta, for example, is like kind of that frost angel. That character, I thought the background looked really cool before, but the background that you have now and like the ice shards and other things like that just add so much character, to use a pun, to Pirta, that it just feels like she isn't gonna come out of any other game. She's exclusively Deliverance, and
Yeah.
um so yeah, that's pretty fantastic. When did you get, I we were talking a little bit before we started recording about, when you felt comfortable enough to start giving feedback on Deliverance, but what did you do in order to kind of build that base of understanding to be able to provide that feedback?
So I'm very Tolkien elvish when it comes to advice, where I don't typically like to give out advice unless it's asked for, kind of thing. So with Deliverance, um, I didn't feel comfortable giving advice on Deliverance until I was very competent in the game and very comfortable with the game and knew the systems very well. And then every time you would ask me, just my opinion on something, just because, two heads are better than one, from those conversations over time, I got more and more comfortable with it. And then eventually got to a thing where I don't know. I don't even know when like the sharp transition point was of like we started just working more back and forth with on things, or like I got more involved with discussions and whatnot. Um, Oftentimes it was like we just started off on our Tuesday meetings and everyone would be kind of talking game design and stuff, and I would just be over here and
Yeah,
painting while you guys all chatted, and I'll just chime in here and there, and then that it just kind of slowly evolved into just a more involved role, I suppose.
yeah. And we spend a lot of time on Discord in voice chat. We have a secret staff series of forums and channels and stuff. And so if you guys don't see us on Discord, we're actually there lurking. I've found side note that I right now I have 9 notifications of people that mentioned me, and I have so little time, it feels like, to do everything, that I'm like head down buried in the actual work and kind of sacrificing some of my involvement in the community, just on a temporary basis. But it's like, wow, there's just so much to get done. And I feel bad talking about and celebrating Deliverance when I should really be working on Deliverance like I should be sweating so that everyone else can get the game, as early as possible and that kind of thing. And so I always feel bad. Like I don't think I've played an actual game of Deliverance in like 2 months. Um, I have
Yeah.
played tiny little pieces of games of Deliverance, like on Tabletop Simulator. I
Right.
have done, we've played like scenarios here and there, but it's not it's not like I have not been able to sit down and just enjoy a game of Deliverance with coffee. I
Yeah.
actually have a meeting, not a meeting, but a meetup a week from well, when we release this video, it's like a week from today, that with a new, like, a family from our church that really really wants to play Deliverance. So I'll
Nice.
actually be able to play a game and
That's
just
awesome.
enjoy
Are you gonna bring
myself.
any new stuff?
Yeah, maybe. I think I'll have to, maybe get some rush printing
How
on
can
some
you
characters or
resist?
something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's gonna be fun. But it's funny how much I I feel like I just understand the system so well. Um and you do too, actually.
Yeah.
And it's
You just play it in your head. You sim it for like a few seconds. You kind of
yeah,
play through the turns.
yeah.
You can kind of calculate what would happen in your head and stuff. And it's like what, really good chess players do with chess,
Mhm.
just not nearly as cool as when they do that kind of thing. But it's similar, just not to that degree.
Yeah, we're not
But
thinking
yeah,
32 moves ahead.
no, not quite. But if you can just think a few moves ahead, you can figure out a lot of problems
Yeah.
from just that.
And there are some good kind of standard rules, if you will, that you can apply. Like, if a minion is dealing enough damage or has enough health,
Yeah,
there are these, very important numbers. Like a minion has to deal at least 2 damage on its turn in order to make the angels
right,
feel threatened at all. And usually the minion does 2 damage plus some other effect. But if it's a big minion like an abomination, then it needs to deal at least 4 damage plus have some
yeah,
effect. And in the abomination's case, the tremor can deal damage to everybody if you
right,
line up poorly. And that's kind of how the players start to lose. If players take an average of 2 damage per minion, they can survive, but an average of 3 damage per minion, they die.
right.
So, like, over a long period of time. And
Fine line.
yeah. And so, like, the break points of how much health a minion should have. If you've got 8 health, then Michael can one shot that minion with overhand, mighty smite on the first turn. But if it has 9, then Michael cannot do that.
Right.
The minion will survive. And so, certain minions will have less health and others will have more. And it's an interesting thing to figure out. And one big one that we use all the time, actually, you use all the time. I think you really popularized this among the team, is the average rotation that an angel uses and the amount of average damage output over 50 turns, or the average typical damage in a turn.
Yeah,
And that's been a really very helpful metric for us to see how, if something is underpowered, overpowered, too one-dimensional, not, or too much of a multitasker,
yeah.
multi-talented thing.
It definitely brings a lot of those issues to light. Like when the first iteration of Damascus, uh, round one, you could just jump around and do like 12 damage to a minion just with smacking him twice.
Yeah,
So,
leaping like the Hulk everywhere he goes.
yep,
So
there were definitely some initial bouncing problems, but that's to be expected. But that's why you test things and
yeah,
refine things.
yeah. There's the concept in Magic the Gathering. I think popularized it, and I don't remember all the names, but you've got 3 types of players. You've got Spike, Timmy, and one other, and I can't remember. But the idea is that they are kind of the avatars for a whole group of players. So Spike likes to win. So Spike is going to play whatever wins. He's going to play the deck that wins. Whatever the flavor of the month is that's most
Hmm.
likely to win, you can be guaranteed he's playing that one. Timmy wants to win, but he wants to win in like a unique and creative way. So he's the one that will play goblins or elves. And for me, like back in the day, deranged hermit, drop a little dude out that a bunch of squirrel tokens, and before you knew it, you were decimated by a million squirrels on the battlefield. He wants to win like that,
It's a good
or
way to
have,
go.
yeah, or the combo that, if he gets this combo, he's gonna throw a fireball at your face for a million damage. that kind of thing. And then there's the other player, which just kind of wants to have fun. Like they don't mind winning or losing. They just want to kind of express their creativity in the character or in the deck that they're playing, and that kind of thing. And I find that our players are kind of that way too, and they need to have ways to express their individual personalities with the characters they're playing. So like if somebody wanted to play Damascus, they're probably going to be more of that aggressive, I want to Hulk smash something,
Yeah.
um rather than I just want to like, support everyone and heal and whatever.
Yeah.
But even those players that want to support and heal should have viable ways to play
Yeah.
Damascus. Um,
And that's
right.
also one of the benefits to a cooperative game. You're going to find the meta players are usually more so seen in like a competitive setting because you don't want to lose because you just took a disadvantage kind of thing, and you don't want to win because you had an advantage. You usually want competitive things to be a much more even playing field.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're all playing cooperatively just versus the game, then it opens up a lot more space for you to have that kind of expression of gameplay to be like, this is kind of how I like to play the game, and that's someone can be like, yeah, that's awesome. I play it this way, and then you just try and beat the game together. Versus just, oh, you play the game that way, all right? Well, I've got the most meta deck possible, so you lost before we even draw our cards, but okay, we'll play through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can express in Deliverance, you can kind of express in the way that you want with a particular character, like Gabriel, for example. There are very, very strong Gabriel builds in the campaign that use 2 level 1 talents, or 2 level 2 talents, and
Yeah,
never bother to go for even a single level 3. And that's like the meta player is going to be like, okay, I'm only putting enough experience into his level 2 talents, and then I'm dumping the rest into stats because I want to make sure that my shield disc gets hits for a ridiculous amount, or I only care about the prayer warrior build and want to draw a million prayer cards, and that's how I play my character. And so I'm gonna spec into empower on my character sheet and whatnot.
yep,
And so you've got the players like that just totally ignore probably the coolest set of talents, like the level 3 talents, because that's what works. And you can kind of, in some, for the most part, like you can cheese most encounters, because the prayer deck is so dynamic, and there are a
yeah,
lot of answers to almost everything that the darkness could throw at you if you could just draw enough of those cards.
yeah,
And so but there are other builds where somebody really, really wants to use, like Miko has this one skill that deals damage equal to the number of spaces you've moved that turn. So you'll
yeah,
have players like doing all sorts of crazy math and figuring out how to move 16 spaces so they can slide into a meddling imp and smack them for a ridiculous amount of damage. And that is like the greatest feeling in the world to those people,
What's really funny, with you didn't know this, but when we played the campaign, I played Gabriel and did the prayer card deck, and my wife played Miko and
That's
used that
awesome.
ability. So
That's so good. Yeah, so it's funny, but it's in both cases, it's like, this is what feels fun. And the
yeah,
thing that I really like, kind of tangent, but the prayer ability, so the pray ability that characters have, it makes every character able to be a support character,
yes,
even if all of your abilities are high damage, spike type abilities. You can be that defensive character that can pray and cast on darkness. And now you have very critically important answers. I call them answers, prayer cards in your hand. They can answer, oh, the darkness deals 5 damage to everyone. But you've got the prayer card that says, no, it doesn't.
right,
Or we actually heal for 5 first, or whatever. And you can just compete against the darkness, in a way that it kind of helps you feel clever, I guess. I don't know.
yeah,
But yeah, it adds, even in like the most one-dimensional character, like if you played Damascus and all you wanted to do is jump into things and punch them, you still have a very dynamic character just simply because you have access to that prey action and the prey cards. They give you new kind of support driven actions or damage driven actions or whatever that you didn't have, like that aren't native to your character. So
right,
um, so then, I'd love to talk, and this is kind of the whole impetus for having a conversation together about the development of the characters in the expansion, and the way that we're putting together the talents for these
Yes.
characters. Because the original way that we did this was um I had like like Uriel, for example. I used Cloud's Omnislash from Final Fantasy VII as my inspiration. It was like, I want to have some sort of attack that just smacks something over and over and over again with a sword. And make the let's make it a flaming sword, So in my head, it seemed really cool having him swing a flaming sword like in the middle of the dark at a target. It was just like a cool little mental picture. And that's how Uriel, the flame of God, was originally conceptualized. And his whole character was kind of built around the idea that he wanted to build up courage to unleash a bunch of attacks in a row. And when we developed his talents, was like, how do I make this character, the whole talent system, in case those listening might not know, you have 5 talents that are level 1, and you get to pick one of them for your character when you level up. And then the next you get to kind of mix and match a little more in campaign. But then you level up again and you get to pick level 2 talents. So and then finally level up again, you get level 3 talents, and they kind of correspond. The level, increasing level, it also impacts like the relative power of that additional skill, that talent you're picking up. And so you get a level 1, 2, and 3 talent. And no matter what it was, I felt like at the time, all you wanted to do is continue to smack people in the head with your sword as many
Yeah.
times as possible as Uriel. So I finally decided, well, let's make it interesting. And I developed this skill called combustion, where I think it's called combustion, or conflagration is what it is, where instead of like hitting one thing, you're actually lighting a group of tiles on fire, every time. So it's like your sword is like now has some range that can like go different directions, and it's more dynamic. And then
Yeah.
there's Sun Wielder, which the first time you hit something, you hit it really, really hard. And then the character started to feel different. Like those talents started to make him feel like, okay, maybe I don't need to smack things a bunch. Maybe I'm just going to punch things once because I have the Sun Wielder skill, and then I'll be support, or I can do whatever I want. And so we kind of modified from like one ability that I wanted to use to the max into like a very dynamic character when we came up with this concept of 3 builds. I don't know.
Yeah.
You want to kind of go into 3 builds at all, or
Yeah,
go
sure.
from here?
So, what we do for the characters, because one thing that the base game had is a lot of just really awesome balanced talents for your different talent choices. So like you get your level twos, you'd have your different level twos to choose from. They're all really cool. And we just, we just made sure that these were all balanced. They felt like the power of a level 2. Some of them felt like they could have just moved from this character though over to this character, and it wouldn't have really been much of a shift because it's just a cool talent, but it wasn't like something that was unique to that character's identity. So what we're trying to do now is when we pull up a character, we look at their base kit, we make sure that's solid, and then we can be like, okay, so what kind of gameplay does this base kit allow us to bring to the game? What kind of decision space does this base kit add to the player? Um, and then we kind of make a list of those things. And from that, we can start to actually make unique talents specific to that character. So for Pirta, for example, her thing is she puts down these squalls, which are these really cool walls and stuff that uh baseline make it so her allies move faster when they walk through them, but she can use them to now do different things like empowering her abilities to do more damage. And then there's a lot of talents that make it so when enemies go through them, they take damage and things of that nature. So we make a list of all the different kind of play styles that you can do, and then we want to make sure that we make talents that support that play style. So if you really like putting down these squalls and these walls around the field, there is a build path for you with kind of some forking options of like, okay, this one's like maybe you're still using squalls, but it makes more damage. Um, it does damage to enemies as you put it down. Or maybe this one just does more damage when you shoot your ice spikes through it. So you can kind of still tailor what you want, but most of the talents are centered around the character's base kit. And then with the level threes, you want that to be really impactful and really strong. So these are like our capstone type talents where you want these talents to be like, this kind of finishes my build feeling of like, this is a really big choice and it's very impactful to the gameplay loop that you're going to have from that point on as far as how your character behaves. Some of the talents might actually add a pain point to your character to then allow you to have more power from that talent. So like maybe it'll make Blizzard cost one more courage. And I was like, okay, well that cuts the amount of blizzards I can use in half. But the power that you get from that blizzard, now we've got a lot more space that we can work in as game designers to fill that with a greater amount of power that we can give you because we've taken some strength away. Now we can add even more back.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of the thought process is just figure out what that character does and then hone in on those specific things. And sometimes we'll add, an extra ability here and there, but we wanted to make sure it like fits well with the kit or like maybe helps alleviate a pain point, not to the point that it just homogenizes everything, but just so that, if there's a quality of life thing that maybe a player would seek, we could add that in here and there with an extra ability or something. But for the most part, we really want to focus it on those specific gameplay styles that that character can offer and make those things more enriched.
Yeah, and one thing that I really enjoy about Deliverance in particular with Pirta, which I shared, so anybody watching this can see her character card right now. The
The old art, by the way.
yeah, we have new art. In fact, actually, we can show um some old and new. Like if you look at our Kickstarter update
That's
that we
actually
post,
that's it right there.
there you
That's
go.
the before and after of
That's
that's what it
awesome.
was right there. That's the new stuff.
Let me
But
pull this wide. Let me pin your thing here. I wonder. There you go. So there's the pin before on the left and after on the right. It's like just this a beautiful background. It's kind of washed out in Zoom, but
yeah, it's zoomed in quite a bit.
yeah,
But
it's
it actually looks like ice spikes now, not just water bending is the
yeah.
main
So
thing.
we're I'm gonna include that on our Kickstarter update so that everybody can see the actual art pieces side by side. So let's see. Let me get back to that screen. So this character Pirta, one of the builds. So the temptation is to turn a character like this is a frost mage type character. The temptation is to turn this into a World of Warcraft frost mage, which is a control character. You have things for people that are familiar. This will be like I'm talking, basic math to you. But for people that are not familiar with the World of Warcraft frost mage, you have a character that is kind of squishy, that's low health, but has high levels of control. So you blast the ground with frost, and enemies get stuck in the frost. Enemies get rooted, and then you can shoot things that are rooted for extra damage. And so this character Pirta is a little bit of that frost kind of not so much control, but she benefits her allies because when you squall is an effect you put on the ground that when allies move through it, when angels move through it, you boost their damage or you boost their range of movement by one. So it's like a wind, like extra wind force kind of added to your adds one to your movement. And the temptation is to turn her into like a control mage that's really squishy and deals a lot of damage, but doesn't take much to drop her. And in actuality, what we decided to do, one of the builds was Ice Spike, reducing that range to one instead of two, and she becomes like this frosty tank. It's a really different build, like something that I never really expected originally when we came up with the concept of Pirta. I thought, it'd be really fun to make a like a mage tank type character, and to turn this character into something that required to be up front, to take and deal damage was a really interesting puzzle. And then there was another, like Glacier. The Glacier skill is an extremely it's very expensive, costs three courage and an action, which is really very expensive. Um, and the base amount of healing is combined. If you combine with both those stats that you see, it's five, which is way higher than any other character. The highest any character has is base kit is three, but so Pirta heals like crazy, and any heavenly treasure you're gonna get It's like 2 out of 3 of those stats are going to benefit that glacier skill. 2 out of 3 of those stats are going to benefit the ice spike skill. So it's a really interesting play style that we've got skills that allow you to glacier on top of yourself and then call down an ice comet from the heavens on everything around you. It's extremely fun
It's really
and
cool.
very different. So um but yeah, so that the we originally had 3 builds, which was like if you look at Azrael, you've got the Angel of Death, which is going to be that I call it the well, it's like the roguelike character, which wants to get up front, deal high damage to things that are adjacent to him, and very mobile. And then you've got the Plague Turret, which sits really far back and wants to just lob damage from far away. And then you've got the kind of like a melee affliction dealer of damage, and like I
Yeah.
don't know exactly how to put it, like, but he eats afflictions for benefit, and then he deals extra with, depending on what's afflicted, extra damage and stuff. So it's so those 3 builds, that was like the old way of doing things, but now, like what you're talking about, we look at each element of what a character does well, and we're like, how can we make that more interesting? Like
Yeah.
for example, Glacier is very expensive, so a level 1 talent that we added is a card that would reduce the cost by 1, and then or what was it, it's when you use it on yourself the cost is reduced, and then it also removes an affliction or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I can't either. But one thing that we've been doing as well is it's not even just 5 builds. Like you think, okay, so there's 5 towns, there's 5 builds. Oftentimes there's like 6 or 7 builds. And the way we do that is you can have one talent work for multiple builds. So it's not just, this is you only have one talent for each thing, but one talent may affect 2 different builds, which kind of allows you to have those branching paths of, okay, so I can either take this talent for where my Blizzard may do something with shields and damage, or I could go more like mobility and damage. So then that talent would affect both the shield build and the Blizzard build versus just Blizzard or just shielding. It does both. So that's kind of how you have this choice path of like kind of weaving through these talent choices versus just like this is a straight line. It's like if you're going all blizzards, well, the blizzards come with a little bit of extra gameplay on top of that too. It's not just blizzard by itself. Because if you're going shield, you're gonna be using a common talent with that same build. Oh, here we go. So this would be the glacier and healer type utility that you were talking about. Did I lose sound or did you lose sound?
Whoops, I muted myself like a
Okay.
smarty. So yeah, there's the card. So yeah, this is an upgraded Glacier, this talent card. It eases the burden of, so Glacier has a range of 1. So you can target yourself or something next to you. But with this skill, you can actually start to become a ranged healer, and Glacier becomes more powerful. So it kind of so there's no level 1 talent that you're like, oh dang it, I got that one. It's always a good thing. Your character will always become more powerful, but this
You just want to go
particular
through the level ones real quick?
yeah, sure.
Like,
We'll go
we don't have
through.
to like go through the twos and the threes. We can leave that for, you know, the
Yeah,
opening of the box. But we could just do like the level ones, kind of give a preview of the different build paths.
yeah. So Shattering Spike will upgrade your ice land, or your ice spike. Whenever you calculate range through Squall with that ice spike skill, you can add 1 to the damage dealt, and you can move the demon. But if you do,
It
you remove the status effect Squall. So
didn't change the one on the screen. It's still showing
oh, is that right?
the Constitution.
Let me see. I wonder
There
if
it
I could
is.
just share my entire screen
Oh, that
too.
worked. Maybe
Okay.
it's just delayed. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Cool. All right. So then, yeah, maybe this will be faster. So the intent behind this one. In fact, if you want to explain the intent behind this one, um,
So this is leaning into uh a kind of just high damage single target ice spike build. So whenever you are doing damage through your squall, you can add more damage to it, and you can even have multiple squalls lined up to do this. So this plays into that build of shooting your ice spikes through squalls, but it also plays into the build of removing squalls. So there's a bunch of mechanics that are just centered around just the removal of squall and what that does. So this would be both of those build paths by choosing this talent. And then
Yes.
from there you can kind of fork into I want to go just ice spike, or I want to go into removing squalls and triggering different effects.
Yeah. So then let's go here. So flash freeze, also an upgrade.
Yep. And this one, the courage cost of your first blizzard you use each round is reduced by one. As I mentioned earlier, there's a talent that increases the cost of your blizzard. Baseline blizzard is just one courage cost, and it's pretty easy to put it out there. It doesn't do a ton just initially because it's just giving you a little movement speed here and there. It's how Pirta interacts with that squall that makes them kind of go really insane. So this one would make your first one free, essentially baseline, and then your next one would still cost one, and beyond that, would all cost one. But it also highly affects the build later on if you go for that more squall heavy build, because that talent that comes that would increase your blizzard cost to two. Well, reducing that two down to a one is very impactful when your blizzards get very, very strong.
Yeah. Yeah, and on top of that, it kind of frees up the courage that you really really want to save for Glacier. When Glacier is it costs three courage, it tends to be really hard to save three courage. A lot of characters will build two courage and then have abilities that spend two courage, which Pirta will do as well. She just will drop two blizzards and then gain two courage through things like Prey or Ice Spike. And so this really allows you to do more and not feel like you're stuck. If you're at zero courage, you're not kind of stuck in a rut with where you end the round at zero courage again,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. All right, slicing shards.
This is also part of a squall build. This is the one where you're going for more of that field control build. So the first time a demon moves through a squall in his turn, that demon is dealt one damage. What that would pretty much mean is it would change how you would effectively want to use your squalls, because typically you're setting up your squalls for your allies to run through to get that burst of movement speed. While it still will do that, you're now also calculating, well, where the demon's going to move through to make sure they walk through and take that damage.
Right.
So it's a lot of damage for a level one, but you have to really play around it to get any damage out of it at all. But if you set it up properly, it's very effective.
Yeah, it's I think this one is one of the talents at level one that changes your behavior the most. If you want to get the most out of
Yeah.
this, you're gonna tell your allies, hey guys, run away, move away from these guys. They're all gonna take damage when they move through my squalls. And so it really encourages a diversity of player behavior, just or maybe a divergence of normal player behavior. When you have this thing, you can really start to abuse it in very fun ways. Next one we talked about was the Cermic
Mm-hmm.
Constitution. And then lastly, we have Ice Armor. So,
Yes. So this was kind of that shield build we were talking about with Pirta. For a bit, we were kind of playing with the idea of like giving her more health for that really tanky thing, but it just didn't really fit her character as much. So we went to more of just like kind of shield or barrier type tank. So she's going to be one of the people who absorbs damage through shielding heavily. And this also would play into one of the options for that removal squall type
mhm,
build. So it kind of like gives you two choices if that's what you want to go to pair with the other choices later on. You've got kind of two choices to start with for that removal build. Or if you just wanted to go with that tank build, and this is going to be your main talent option.
yeah. So, and also like in the campaign, you can combine the same level talents. So right after the first mission, you get your first
Yeah,
level one talent, and then the next mission, you have enough experience to purchase a second talent of level one. So you can use your ice armor with the shattering spike,
yeah,
and you can be like a high damage mage that gains shield every single time you remove squall, which of course this shattering spike allows you to remove squall and deal damage. So now we're not going to spoil all the talents for you, but maybe we'll pick on like one random talent at level one and like or at level two, and then one at level three, and then you can kind of go over it. You have any?
disclaimer, all of these are subject to change.
Oh, absolutely, yes. So, let's see. How about I don't know. I'm just gonna pick this one. Here we go.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
there's the
fitting because
increase.
that's the one that we were talking about. So you increase the cost of Blizzard. So again, it's like that give and take system. Um, After you place a squall with Blizzard, deal wisdom damage divided evenly as possible among demons adjacent to that squall. So now you're not only thinking about where you're placing it, maybe for the way the bad guys are coming through it, if you've got that talent, or to set up shooting through it, or to boost the way your allies are moving. But now maybe you're setting it down in a specific place so that you can explode some demons who are next to it. So a lot of choices that we kind of add in through the talents. That way, the base kit still is core to what she's trying to do, but it's not this overbearing amount of mathing in your head. Depending on what talents you choose, will open up different gameplay choices that you can make. But by having them be in the talents, not just all overloaded in the base kit, it makes it so it's not adding too many decisions with all at the same time, because you can add just one new gameplay style. You don't have to then add also if demons walk through it, and also shattering through it. You can kind of pick and choose what type of things you want to lean into with the build.
Yeah. So then let's choose. I'm gonna go for the last one here. So this is a level 3 talent, one of what you called the capstone talents.
Yes.
Um,
So this would be like the
so
capstone of removing squalls, essentially. Because the talent earlier said that if you remove a squall, you would give yourself a shield. Well, this one will make it so when an angel moves through a squall, you may remove that squall. If you do, that angel gains swift, so they get a little that kind of wind of that squall that's speeding them up, kind of stays with them for a little bit. Um, they gain swift, and their next damaging skill deals 2 bonus damage. Bonus damage meaning it's not a separate instance of damage. So for all of you who like using
I want
empower,
to abuse
don't get
empower
too
too much.
excited. It's added on to the abilities damage, not it's a separate thing. But it's still very good. It makes it so like as if you're going for that melee build, also you can use the squall to run through it and then get that bonus damage for yourself. Or if you're going for more supportive build, you can kind of just set them out for your friends to run through. They go through the squall, they get that bonus damage, and you kind of do your damage vicariously through them, which is a really cool thing. Kind of a that type of bard type gameplay if you're that type of player.
It'd be cool to pair Pirta and Uriel. We're talking about him, how he likes to just move and smack stuff with
Fire and
Crucible.
ice.
Yes, dude, I'm telling you, like, load Uriel up with courage, and then have Pirta drop a bunch of squall,
Yeah.
next to an enemy, and Uriel's just gonna move this way and smack him, move this way and smack him, move that way
Yep.
and smack him, and it's gonna be a really cool way to finish. It reminds me of like double tax from Chrono Trigger, something like that. I don't know if you remember
Yep.
that.
I never. that's a little before me. Chrono Trigger was just a bit before me.
Oh man, it's
Chrono Cross. That was a game
probably the
that I
best game
remember.
ever made. I think Chrono Trigger might be. It would definitely be on my top, maybe top 3 list for best games ever made. Um,
Wow. Nice.
so it gets very high praise.
Fable
So,
one for me for is that kind of like special place of an
mhm,
RPG for whatever
yeah,
reason.
I played
Um.
a lot of Fable. So
Yeah.
I definitely hear what you're saying. But yeah, I think Chrono Trigger for me was in addition to just being a really great game, it also hit at the right time. That
Yeah. That's
just
fair.
kind of like World of Warcraft did for me at the time. I had no idea a game could be that epic, and it expanded my horizon so much that I felt like I just didn't want to be in the real world. I only wanted to be in the world of Warcraft.
Yeah. That's awesome when you get that escapism from a game so good.
Yeah, yeah. Or you get into the story, like when Eris was killed in Final Fantasy VII, I actually shed a real tear.
I think
It's like,
everyone of that age did. I was too young for Final Fantasy VII to have that impact. I played eight, so that was
oh,
like the
yep,
the gap there for me. I played eight and really got into eight, but seven was just before my time.
yeah. So it's funny, it's pretty cool to discuss all of this stuff. It's it's made our turnaround time functionally when we are doing this for playtesting. What we do is we come up with a character. We have a lot more knowledge about how a character works. We have a lot of ideas and that sort of thing. But we help we design talents. I design in like 3 hours. I have a list of 15 talents, and they're not, sometimes they're hit, other times they're total miss. They're not super dynamic. I want to say like the first 15 talents I did for Pirta, every single one of them involves Squall. It was like you can do squall like this, you can do squall like that. It's
Yeah.
like it's like a hamburger. You can have a hamburger with mustard, you can have it with
Hmm.
mayo, you can have it with lettuce. It's like, but is it really that original if it's like the sauce is the only thing I can change? I don't anyway. When we so we had playtesters play this character a bunch. I played this character, Dan played this character. And then when we're like, okay, we feel like we have an understanding of what this character wants to do and where it's like very one dimensional, let's take the approach of finding the 5 things this character really likes to do, and the talents need to enhance that somehow, and um,
Yeah.
that system has really, really left, I think, a very positive impression on the characters. So it's cool.
Yes, I agree. And also, I just think it's just, since we have a larger design team and we're all bouncing ideas off of each other, and that process by itself makes a huge difference. When you have someone to just knock your ideas back and forth with versus just being in your head,
Mhm.
because there are times like, I'll put down something and you're like, yeah, that doesn't work. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Okay. And then the same with the opposite. I think it's very important to have kind of another person involved with game design to be able to point out when things don't make sense, and or even just play off of an idea that you put down of like, yeah, that's a really cool thing. It doesn't work because of this reason. What if we just changed it a little bit in this way, and now all of a sudden it works and you both love it and it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, we had this one card, Cold Plunge was one that was we were trying to find a position for it where we wanted to give Pirta some additional interaction with prayer cards, because certain builds really got away from using the prayer mechanic where she wanted to either heal stuff or be a tank or damage things, and that didn't leave a whole lot of room naturally for the prayer, for the pray skill. And so we have this card that really helps you gain additional access to prayer cards, but we gave it a dual use of helping you be a tank, so you get to choose one or the other, whenever the card activates. And it's so we have like these one-off talents that just feel like it's a really fun thing to do. Easiest example is that Gabriel's prayer warrior. It does fit in with his kit, but that one card is kind of like the central engine to everything that Gabriel does if you like to play that way. It's like you
Yeah.
need that one talent. That one talent's the linchpin to play Gabriel in this really cool way. And so I love these sometimes one-off talents that you can like build other cards around, so that in the end, I just want to make sure that when you get a level 1, 2, and 3 talent, your character feels unique, interesting, and very diverse from the last time you played that character. Even
Yes.
and so like when you play Pirta 5 times in a row, you're going to have 5 different fun experiences where you feel overpowered in a completely unique way. So
She's one of my favorites
yeah,
personally.
yeah. So it's I'm having a hard time deciding right now. I think Zira is my favorite because her turns are really complicated. There's a lot of math to
Yes.
think about, like when you're playing that Zira. And Pirta is like, if you want to hit something for 15 twice in a row, oh my goodness, that it just feels so good to play Pirta. And but yeah, I'm like, how can I deal 1 damage 15 times in a row, with
Right.
Zira. So but yeah, so any other thoughts, anything you wanted to share with the Deliverance fans while I have you here?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much covered most of the game dev stuff.
Awesome.
Sounds like my family actually just walked in the door.
Oh, very good.
So
Well, then,
good timing.
yeah, before all the kids start
Yep.
blowing up your mic, we'll say see you guys around next time. If you have any questions for Dan, ask him in the comments of this video, and make sure to check out our Kickstarter update on going live today on Kickstarter. I'll catch you guys. Oh, and we'll include that in the show notes of this video. Catch you
Take
guys
care.
later. See ya.